Hi, welcome to this week's Spring Forward series, Podcast 11. We are Poppy and Geoff Spencer, relational experts, speakers, authors, and this week's podcast is about masks, why we wear them, how we might remove them. Last week we were at our master coach's home, Jack Canfield in Santa Barbara, California. What a time we had. So many revelations and insights, right?
It sure did. We had lots of takeaways from last week's Steve Harrison and Jack Canfield Mastermind Retreat. There are about 15 of us in this leadership entrepreneur group, and we shared a group think for 2 days and 2 nights that was really powerful, very insightful.
We're not even sure where to start with the pearls we received from the time with Jack and his team. I think Jack had us jump over the candlestick, in a way. We appreciate the time with Patty Aubrey, who's the president of the Canfield Training Group, and a huge call out to Patty for her instantaneous insights. It was kind of like, don't you think it was kind of like her intuition didn't pass go and collect anything? Mm-hmm. She just was this free-flowing reservoir of incredible ideas. And one of the things we discovered is that when we have 15 brilliant entrepreneurial minds in a room to brainstorm, the ideation is explosive. Last podcast in last week's before we went there, our podcast in Spring Forward, we spoke about projection, both negative and positive. And I think after our experience with Jack Canfield, we can safely say that any projection we discuss will be about positive things like goal setting. And in the second half of this podcast, you guys are in for a treat. We will bring on our guest, McNealy, who's an insightful genius in our minds. You won't want to miss her as she'll share the most incredible journey she took to overcome enormous obstacles that she chose. Yes, we mean choose a life of positive well-being.
We were both so taken with Megan's life journey and how she continually sprung forward in all of her life's experiences. And at the Canfield retreat itself, with all the mastermind colleagues together in Jack's living room, completely raised our own level of consciousness. Not to be too woo-woo about this, but the law of attraction concept, that what we think and how we feel and how we act completely determines our outcomes. And this was certainly the case with Megan. And of course, we knew all of that before. We knew about the law of attraction, and we embraced the law of attraction for many years. But to hear all these stories of so many colleagues that triumphed over incredible obstacles, it really underscored and confirmed what we already knew. Each and every one of us had something valuable to share, and something that we've accomplished, something important that happened in our lives and their lives. And it seems sort of contrary to what society projects us to, which is to be the norm. Many of our group members suffered really incredible health setbacks from working too many hours and just too many things that distracted them. They lost their balance in their life, and they set out to reshape their thinking and seek balance in organic and really holistic ways.
Yeah, it was amazing. We also found that many of us followed our passion on similar paths. We all were on a mission to serve the greater good, which is like you all who are listening. With our healthcare systems upside down, we all came together and shared best new practices of what could work without prescriptions and surgeries. I think that was one of the many aha moments that we had. It's sort of like the intersection of science and faith. When Geoff and I first got back together, this reminds me, we talked about movies, what we'd seen. And one of the movies I hadn't seen that he enjoyed was Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey in the movie Contact.
Oh, right. Yeah. Jodie Foster is a pure scientist who only dealt in fact. And if not proven through the scientific method, it wasn't valid. And Matthew McConaughey was a big deal minister who was like minister to the country and gently challenged her with questions like, when he were discussing the whole idea of faith. And he said, well, did your parents love you? And she says, well, yes, of course they did. And he says, well, how do you know that? Prove it. And of course, you can't prove it, but that's the whole idea behind faith. Eventually, the alien beings in this movie sent plans down to build a portal for a human to travel and come visit them in a distant star. Jodie Foster becomes the chosen one. She goes, and at the end of the movie, she travels through this whole wormhole and travels to this different solar system. And the people who were watching only had a momentary blip of where they couldn't see her, where she traveled, but everyone else, they saw nothing else, okay? She was gone for like 17 hours, but they saw nothing. They looked down at the ground and mumbled, you didn't go anywhere, then nothing happened. When she came back, she had 17 hours of blank video recordings, so she couldn't prove anything. She pleaded in a congressional hearing that she did indeed travel, and she asked them to believe her, and she saw her father, and she went to this heavenly place. And, the last line in front of this congressional hearing, the panelists asked her, she says, you want us to all just believe you and to go on faith? And he almost spat it out at her.
I think that was that was the funniest thing. So there's so many things that we can't, account for in a scientific method. And certainly many of Jack Canfield's and his other authors, their inspirational Chicken Soup for the Soul series books have countless, dozens and dozens of stories like that, where the inexplicable occurred and it seemed like a miracle, but it can't be understood through a scientific lens. And I think that's what we all experienced this past week, and what we'd like to share with you, to open your eyes to the possibility that we create all of our experiences, and what we think and believe we can manifest if we really do that. We all had sort of this open form of faith and belief. We were all continually infused with positivity and openness. There were no restrictions or limitation. And that's what we'd love to inspire with you. What if you ignored anyone around you who puts up those, proverbial stop signs, who say things like, well, that won't happen, or that probably isn't a good idea, those who resist change and comfort zones. And what if you could immediately strengthen a relationship that has been strained? It could be a spouse, someone you're dating, a sibling, a parent, a boss, a coworker.
And this always brings us back to our trademark communication tool, the emotional clock, and the one word that every interaction that we have with one another, each human being, we must have it vulnerability. This is a critical thing to make communication real and make it actually go somewhere. And whenever we're vulnerable and our ego is exposed in a genuine way, we've taken the first steps towards authentic communication.
I know. But then there's always that hiccup. Or, well, what about the other person who's afraid to be vulnerable, who doesn't know how to be exposed, who still wears a mask? They put on this fake persona. Everything's fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is a big challenge, because if the other person is not willing to do the same, the onus is on you to decide if you're willing to accept this dynamic. And you have to say, am I willing to be courageous and share openly? Can you do the same? You have to basically ask that question. And why are you wearing masks? What are you hiding from? What is it that you don't want to share?
Yeah, I think we wear masks because we're afraid to show our true selves. Maybe we're embarrassed. There's some self-loathing that we project into our relationships, and it does come from inside. It comes to personal accountability. One of our favorite words here. We have to own our own stuff. As Jack Canfield said to us a few days ago, none of this is new concepts, but we also know that we learn and grow at different times and in different ways. It's kind of like the idiom, when the student is ready, the teacher will show up and appear. So maybe this message is for you today, right now. And we all have these defense mechanisms. We're wired that way as human beings. I think we shared with you that before 2,000 years ago, the human brain was wired for two things: survival and procreation. Defense mechanisms are part of our evolutionary history, but we can help you override them when it comes to our emotional survival. Posing one simple conscious self-prompt like, why am I being defensive in this situation? Why am I afraid? So many times we're defensive by unconscious default instead of conscious awareness. So don't you think that's something that we took away? This conscious awareness in the present moment was like the big light bulb for us. And even though we knew that intellectually, I don't think we really embraced it, emotionally and internally. We ask clients when their defense systems ramp up, what's the worst thing that can happen?
And usually it's he or she's going to break up with me, or they're going to want to get a divorce, and I'm scared that they'll be angry or resentful about what I'm saying, or I might get fired, or I might say something about the unethical thing that happened at work. And we ask clients, if someone is not all in a relationship, would you like to find out now or later? Because if that's the case, if they're not all in, and the writing might be on the wall. The commitment level of both parties is off balance. But for a relationship to be successful, each party must be vulnerable and all in, period. All in. And by the way, Poppy and I talked about this at length the other day. This is a wonderful thing, being all in. Marriages you stay with, and the marriages you can save are the ones where both parties want that. Again, they want to get back to whatever that wonderful thing was they had at the beginning. And if the foundation was initially there, the relationship can be sustained, can be rescued, can be brought back to a very high level.
Yes. And you know what? And when we have that clarity, and make no mistake, without vulnerability, we don't believe you'll get clarity. If you have that clarity, that vulnerability is already in place, you will immediately sync up with your own life and the life of your partner. Remember in The Notebook when Noah sprinkled the pathway of roses to the art studio he built for Allie? That became Allie's clear and defining moment. Her love language must have been acts of service. We talk about that all the time, love languages. Her fiance, as nice as the guy was, didn't even know that she had painted. So when we're vulnerable and open with one another, we understand each other because there's no veil of fraud that covers us up. Don't you just relish the moments you have when you feel in every cell of your being that someone gets you? It's truly better than chocolate.
That's chocolate. Oh, why do you change the whole framework here? We often talk about reframing, and there's an intentionality that comes with this, and a choice. We choose to reframe things that don't make us feel good.
And a lot of times we'll have a negative experience and it feels bad, and we shake it off. And so many times we encounter something that feels bad. Here in Florida, we have incredible traffic that's out of control. But we also live in one of the best cities in Florida, voted number one best city in Florida. We have beautiful beaches, so we attract tourists. So the reframe for that would be, yes, the roads are clogged, but we have a lot of people that are happy being here. They love being here. They're infusing our economy. They are embracing the retailers who sometimes suffer during the summertime when it's really hot. So, you know what? I think Megan is going to be checking in with us pretty soon.
Okay. Is it time for us to bring Megan on board? Again, Megan is this wonderful person that we met at this retreat, and you always get stunned.
Yeah, you always get stunned. She has a wonderful program that she created that she shared with us.
Okay.
And why don't you just give a brief little intro?
Well, again, I don't want to take away from her speech about what she did, but she had some huge health challenges because of overworking and overstressing herself in many different areas. And she came up with this vibrant mind, vibrant body, vibrant spirit concept, okay? And it's taking all the aspects of your life that you need to have in balance. And, so many of us lose track of those things, so we can make sure that we are doing all the right things, both in our body, mind, and spirit, that all those aspects of our life are in good order. So it's a wonderful thing to do. Oh, and we are so delighted to have Megan McNealy with us, a wellness coach, a
well-being thought
leader, and a keynote speaker, and a writer. And also just a wonderful, dynamic woman. It was such a pleasure to be with this great lady, and just to feel all of her energy. And it was it was a wonderful story that she shared, and I always almost feel embarrassed sometimes when I have a tiny ache or a pain that slows me down when I hear some people that have had so many other things that are way, way more challenging. And yeah. So, anyways, Megan, welcome to our show.
Hey, Megan.
Oh, hi, Poppy. Hi, Geoff. Oh, I mean, it was wonderful to collaborate with you at Jack's, and I rarely meet people that have the same level of vibrancy. So I was thrilled to spend some time with you both. It was great.
Well, we were in awe of you, and we had so many takeaways from that. What was one of your favorite takeaways from Jack's experience?
I think the importance of collaboration was very important. What I went thinking is that certainly Jack would give us all great advice, which is exactly what happened.
Right.
But what I also felt is that everybody gave each other great advice, from you, from the other amazing people that were there. So I really expanded my open heart related to thoughts about how to further my message. It was amazing.
Wonderful.
Well, share with us, like I was kind of hinting at some of the challenging journey, but, and meeting you, I would have never believed that any of these things actually happened to you.
Right.
But to share some of the things that became your discovery, if you could.
Absolutely. So just to let your audience know, I have been a 20-year senior financial advisor at one of the largest corporations in America, in the financial services industry. And I began that career when I was in my late 20s. I have always been a striver. I was a tennis star when I was younger. I certainly decided that I was going to do everything possible to do well in a very male-dominated industry. There's about 10% women in the financial services industry at the moment. And I was going to do everything I could to do well. So I began working 12-hour days. I worked every Saturday for 2 years straight. I got married to a wonderful person. We had children. One of them is a special needs child. I started to realize I had a lot on my plate in addition to that career. The first thing that happened to me, the first physical symptom was high blood pressure, which I discovered after I had ridden a 30-mile ride and was at a health fair. The ride ended at the health fair in San Diego, and I just volunteered to take my blood pressure, and lo and behold, I could not believe it. That was the first kind of warning sign. Fast forward about 10 years, the second warning sign that I had was I contracted or attracted rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease for your listeners who may not know. It's a disease where the body attacks itself, in this case, the joints. And so I suddenly, even with 2 small children, with a husband that was an executive traveling all over the world, I suddenly couldn't pick up my kids. I couldn't get off the floor without help. I couldn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time because of the pain. And being that tennis player, I could certainly not hold a racket. So I found myself inside a body that was almost like an alarm system going off. And keep in mind, on the outside, though, I could actually appear at work. And I know you've been talking about masks.
I was going to say, this is a great mask, isn't it? Yeah, right.
Yeah, I could appear at work. And just, I would wear slightly more comfortable heels so I wouldn't limp in front of my boss or clients. The year that my hands became frozen open, I started to memorize what clients said to me and kept my hands beneath a table, kind of folded in my lap so that no one would notice how swollen they were.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So
what'd you do about shaking hands? Did you just
I tried not to. It was so incredibly painful. Our district director, who is such a jovial, incredible man, almost brought me to my knees when he shook my hand once. But it's interesting because I think that, for many of your listeners, they may may have something like that. There's over 80 autoimmune diseases now, with 50 million people suffering from them in the United States. And those are 2016 numbers. And a lot of these diseases are not apparent to the naked eye. You could cover them up, in other words. And I thought it was in my best interest, certainly as a career person. And mind you, at the same time, I was gathering awards on my wall. I was traveling all over the United States for my firm, giving keynote speeches about my success. I thought, I can do this. This disease is not me. And so behind the scenes, I started a deep, deep hero's quest to turn around my health. I first started with all of the body practices I have in my well-being, what I call my well-being blend. That can be found on my website, which is www.meganmcnealy.com, MEGANMCNEALY.com. I started with my diet. I formerly had been eating those maple nut scones from Starbucks, lots of coffee.
Oh, those are
I'd
so
have a
good.
Diet Coke for lunch, a little wine after work, just not quite a healthy approach. I was sort of getting by. I would eat standing up, for instance, for dinner while I handled my toddlers. I'm sure some of your guests can relate. And then what I was realized, I didn't get 100% better with that. I got about half better when I started, walking, getting enough sleep. I started, just walking gently, even though I couldn't walk very well. I thought I need some enlivening exercise. I started to, spend a little bit more time in the sun, not excessively, but just to get out and get some fresh air rather than skip lunch. I would sit outside.
Get a little of that vitamin D, huh?
Exactly. Right. And then I started to do some relaxation as well. So I started to get a massage once a week. And the first time I got a massage, you guys will love this, I put my cell phone under my hip in case it should ring. Now, I don't think that's very relaxing.
No.
But I went baby steps.
Yes.
So
it's hard for us to unplug and disconnect. It really
Correct.
is.
Especially, again, as you said, if you are in a situation where it is very important for you to appear a certain way.
Exactly.
So in my corporation, I wanted to do the best job I could, and I love my job. So I love my clients. I want to appear that I'm healthy, that I'm completely present with them. And I have always felt that way. I still feel that way today. So what I had to really kind of come to terms with is, what is the real me? And how can I be that amazing work person and be well at the same time? That has been my quest.
Wonderful.
But before I figured it out, though, things got worse. I got another autoimmune disease, which was chronic kidney disease. FSGS is the name of it. And then I realized I really had a lot of work to do. And that's when I started going into my mind practices. The first ones I mentioned were what I call body practices. The second section is I started to work on my mind and really get back to what you've been talking about is, where's that vulnerable place in me? With this kind of image I had of myself, which, it turned out to be a race car image. I was like a race car that never took any pit stops. I never was stopping to have that relationship with myself that you were talking about. I just couldn't figure how I could get that accomplished with two little toddlers, with a spouse that was traveling worldwide, with the one daughter who had the special needs. I had put myself absolutely last, had no relationship with myself. I'll give an example. I was a writer my whole life. You're writing in my journal when I was a little girl. I even have a undergrad degree in creative writing. I really like writing. When I got diagnosed with the first autoimmune disease, I hadn't written a word in 6 years.
Wow.
That spirit-lifting hobby had vanished from my life. And so I think that for many people that are listening and listening to your great advice about when our masks are dropped, when we really take a moment to figure out who we really are, to take time to ourselves, even if it's 10 minutes in the backyard looking at the birds, or 10 minutes meditating, or 10 minutes with your loved one.
Or 10 minutes journaling,
Exactly.
Right.
Those practices are what really turned my health around. That's when I started to get better. So just to give you a sense, it took 9 years for me to get the rheumatoid arthritis in remission.
Wow.
9 years. It was mostly because I was doing all those body practices. I mean, you can drink as much green juice as you want.
Right.
Right? But if you aren't really spending time by yourself, figuring out, who am I beneath this mask? Who am I? What values, do I really believe in? For me, it's love and truth. How am I expressing those in my outer life? Am I really, if love is one of my highest values, I had to be honest with myself. I wasn't really loving myself by being that race car, never taking the break.
Right.
One thing you said early on in your conversation with us here that I heard it, and I love the way you corrected yourself in a kind of unusual way. You said contracted these issues, and you stopped and you said no, attracted those.
Correct.
Which I thought that was fascinating.
Right.
That's this. I know this kind of gets to this whole ideas of what we bring into our lives, of our behaviors, our thoughts, or lack of certain behaviors and thoughts. And this is this law of attraction. This is what you bring to yourself by carrying on this way. So I love the way you kind of just stopped in the middle of that sentence and said that.
Because isn't it true that if we have a mask on, we put it there?
Oh, absolutely.
Ourselves.
And one of the things that Poppy and I, in our discovery, our lives and our respective, when we were apart, for 32 years, we'd had our own struggles and our own things going on. And one of the most incredible moments that we both experienced is when I did happen to, when the law of attraction touched me on the shoulder and said, "This is time to call Poppy," and I did call her. Both of us, while we could have easily had masks on to protect ourselves, because we both have been hurt all those years ago and a lot of other hurts along the way, both of us completely and totally were without masks. We were 100% vulnerable and open. And, it was probably one thing that made this rediscovery work so perfectly was the fact that we didn't put up any barriers. We didn't try to pretend to be something else. I remember I thought to myself, how can I be anything else other than what I am? Because Poppy knows who I am. So
that's incredible. And that way, it sounds like you were able to go right back where you'd been.
And we did.
Because you were at your essence, see?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And both at your essence.
And then we get clarity. In our book, 1 Billion Seconds, we wrote about this phrase that we came up with complete vulnerability brings absolute empowerment.
I love that.
Or clarity.
I'm writing that down, Poppy.
Yeah.
It's in our book.
Say
You'll
it
find
again.
it.
Say it again for your
With
listeners.
complete vulnerability brings absolute empowerment.
And it almost sounds counterintuitive. You think vulnerability would take away your power, but it gives it to you. All the answers are there when you're vulnerable. There aren't any. You seek the truth. The vulnerability is the truth. It's and in fact, we talk about this moment of clarity. When Poppy and I did rediscover ourselves after a very short few days and few weeks of communicating daily, hours each day, I remember I had this moment of clarity that just was like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. This is, I'm starting a life again with this woman, and I'm going to have her in my life, and we will have each other, because it was so crystal clear that there was not a thought in my mind other than this is it. I'm 100% all in, and
and even though we lived in opposite states and different states and other things, it just, those obstacles never even became conscious thought.
It never crossed my mind.
So when you're vulnerable, those obstacles really don't appear in your own mind. Yes, you might have outsiders that throw that, and we certainly had that. What about this? What about that? We certainly had that. And I'm sure you might have been doing that too. Let's get back to you, but with your challenges that you had, and so go back to that.
Exactly. So what I would, and the parallel there, I think that's a phenomenal story, because again, yes, you saw each other's essence. You really wanted each other to see the real you. What I have found in my work in the corporate sphere, or with entrepreneurs, or with change makers, all three I've been interviewing for my book, what is really interesting and what is counterintuitive is that person who really is vulnerable, who really is truly themselves, who really lives that life, is a much more likable, powerful person at work.
Right.
And so I'll give you an example. So if what I used to think when I was in my striving state, and I was very successful doing that, I mean, by all means, except health-wise, of course, which was disastrous to my health. But as far as my performance at work, I was doing terrific. I would have, let's say in the old me, I would have worked all day Saturday. I would have had my spouse watch my children while I worked all day Saturday. I would have come home grumpy. On Sunday, I may have had a little time to myself, but not much. I would have fed the kids, standing up again, that kind of, get the pattern. The next morning before work, I would have gotten my venti coffee at Starbucks. It would have been very jacked up on caffeine.
Yeah.
I would have had, not a healthy breakfast. I would have come into my first meeting, dropped my calculator on the ground, and appeared touched, disheveled. If somebody had said, "How was your weekend?" I would say, so much work, and I was so productive. And what I realized is, how much better is this person? The person who spent all day Sunday with their children, they had a beautiful romantic connection with their partner, like just can imagine you two on a Sunday night having a nice romantic dinner together, light a candle. You had a good night's sleep. You didn't stay up late. You have your very healthy breakfast in the morning, and you had your tea, and you walk into your meeting calm as a cucumber. So it says, "How was your weekend?" And you say, "I had an incredible time. Love is one of my highest values, and I got to spend a lot of time with my loved ones this weekend."
I like that person a lot better, yes.
Everybody does. And what the interviews that I've been doing with a lot of these senior leaders here in America today, they have found that by really tapping into that vulnerable self, that person that is truly who they are, and sharing a bit about that person when they are at work has empowered them immensely. They seem human. They're even more powerful. So I'll give you another great example. From the time I was sickest, which was in 2010, till 2016, I tripled my income.
Wow.
And it was because I put these well-being practices into place. It's not that I had spent less time at work. It's just I took better care of myself. I was more in alignment. I was more exactly who I was at home. And, that funny, you guys know me, that funny, vibrant, happy self. I would show up to my client meeting. I was much more, because I had a sufficient rest now, because I had a great breakfast. I took care of myself in my free time. I was able to be so much more present with the client in front of me.
Beautiful.
So much more happy to be there, so much more rested. People can tell when you're not happy. Deep down, right? They can tell there's a mask on there.
Absolutely.
Tell me what you think about that. You know that, right?
Absolutely. We can always say that. In fact, we talked about that with several people at the Canfield retreat, that we can tell people's energies,
Yes.
and if they're depleted, if they're in a negative place, you can just see that just by the look on their face,
And Poppy and I, we kind of, because we focus on relationships and trying to make them better for people, we can really quickly pick up on the energy of the relationship, and how they interact with someone else, if their significant other is with them, or even if they're just talking about the significant other, we'll often quickly get a feel for where that lies.
Yeah. Absolutely. And for somebody who's caught up in the striving,
yes,
they may think that it's not obvious
right
to others, right? And that's how I was. Oh, I'm great.
Yes.
In fact, because I was getting a lot of rewards at work, or people would say things like, I don't know how you do it.
right
I don't know how you can be the room mother for the class on top of that career, on top of this and that. It kind of fueled my passion for the race car.
right. It's kind of it becomes a fixation and obsession almost, right?
Right. And I can't tell you how much more I enjoy myself. Just, like getting to know you both, and then hearing Geoff sing, and I have such a more, I guess, love for life. I've always been a positive person.
Right.
I've always had a very positive attitude, but it's almost without that that mask. Without that mask, it's almost as if there's so much more love.
Yes.
I guess always, whether it's love for myself, love for other people. There's nothing in between us.
Right. And it's
right.
that's it.
I could sit and enjoy hearing Geoff sing rather than think I should really check my cell phone in case I've gotten a business call.
Right. I understand.
I'm so glad you listened.
Yes, I am. Exactly.
No, so
God, you're amazing.
So
Yes.
one of the things, for our listeners, what other than your amazing turnaround and reframe, we talk about reframing all the time. Other than your reframe, what would you say? What advice would you give to them other than, are they ever able to have a consult with you to talk about all those aspects on your wheel? And could you talk about
Sure.
your wheel a little bit?
Sure. So as I was healing myself, and it ended up that I eventually got cancer as well.
Oh my God.
Yes,
just throw that in too. Yeah. Okay.
This is like as if it wasn't bad enough. But what I first of all want to say is anybody who's struggling with a health issue, there is hope. I no longer have any of the health issues that I mentioned.
Wow.
I am fully recovered. I was, one of my most happy moments of my life was being discharged from my autoimmune doctor because he said, I no longer need to treat you. You're completely okay.
Wow.
And I practically ran out of the office. What I did, though, in my quest is I felt that it was very difficult to get great information because all of us are different. Every one of us has a different body. One of us has a different mind and a different spirit. So what I first did is I realized, is there anything universal about this? Is there anything universal that I could help people with? And so I created it visually looks like a wheel. It has 3 sections: body, mind, and spirit. And each section addresses something universal. For instance, in the body section, enlivening exercise is one of the spokes. And I think that's we can all agree that exercise is quite good for everybody. But what I also realized is that, as I mentioned before, we're all different. So, Poppy, for what might be your favorite relaxation may be different than Geoff's favorite relaxation. And we really need to honor that. We really have to take off our mask, and we really have to see who we are as a person. And so what I help people do if I have a wellness consultation with them is I help them come up with that very customized well-being blend of body, mind, and spirit practices. For your listeners, the easiest thing I have found in how many people I've interviewed and how many entrepreneurs or executives, it doesn't matter. Everybody knows what their spirit lifting hobby is.
Right. I love that. Wait, 1 second. Yeah. Spirit lifting hobby. I know mine would, as a former artist and art therapist, it would probably be making art. Yours would be what?
Well, often
your favorite relaxation.
No, I really enjoy the aspects of singing. That's one of those things that does enliven my spirit in a huge way. And when I'm able to put the best of my talents to great use, it's very fulfilling.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And about singing, Geoff, I will mention one thing that's powerful about singing for you is that I call that a power practice. So think about it. If a power practice combines body, mind, and spirit together. They're very unique. And I explain that on my website too at meganmcnealy.com, that a power practice, if you have one, you want to do it as much as you can, because in Geoff's case, see, his body is singing. There's a vibration, coming out, and he's singing. He's got a great voice. Also, his mind is remembering all of the words of that song, all the memories of what are the associations I have with that song. Oh, I remember singing that to Poppy when we first met, or that sort of thing. And then he's got the spirit lifting part of it, which is that, when he sang for our group, everybody was enlightened and lifted by that. And see, so it's a spirit lifting hobby as well. So body, mind, and spirit. That's why that's powerful. For you, Poppy, you're actually moving your hands. It's a physical activity to be doing art. You're using your mind. Oh, what did I learn in art school? How does that apply to art therapy? You're using your brain to assess what it is that you're doing, and then it has that spirit lifting ability, whether you're taking in the color or the style or how it's making you feel right now. And that's why for both of you, those are what I call power practices.
Right. And with my art therapy, of course, I practiced for 12 years working with clients and groups, and that was hugely uplifting, that I could evoke from other people senses that they've never even experienced before. So that was like my star reward, if you want to call it that.
Exactly. That's why those are really powerful. And so I help people figure out if they're, do they have a power practice that they could really maximize? And if you just compare it to something like drinking green juice, you can tell there's a big difference between, right?
Which I do.
I'm not a green juice drinker. I haven't gotten on that one yet.
It is an acquired taste.
Yes, we say that.
Exactly.
Okay, so in the spirit or in the mind, talk about one of the things in your spokes on your well-being wheel.
On the mind.
In your mind. Okay. So one of the things I will say is, as a mind practice, is having a positive attitude.
Yes.
And I think nobody embodies that better than you two.
I'd say you give us a whale of a run for our money. I was embarrassed how much I didn't have compared to you.
No, you're awesome.
So having a positive attitude is incredibly important for someone who's healing, or somebody who wants to up-level their well-being, or wants to really step away from any masks.
Yeah.
Really wants to be authentic, because that positive attitude is what carries you. I am worthy. I am excited to be here. I am somebody who is destined for great things. I'm, in speaking to you today, I was really excited. I hope this helps people.
Oh my gosh. Of course.
Yeah. And so a positive attitude is very useful. I'll give you an example. When I was about to have my cancer surgery, I was so thrilled because my oncologist told me that at the end of the surgery, I will not have cancer anymore. Because that tumor will be removed. I was thrilled to hear that. And so I was playing the Rocky theme song on my, on my iPhone, and I had the Rocky theme song in my headset, and I was in the preparation room, and the nurses were like, we have never seen anybody look that happy. Of course, coming into like a cancer surgery. I mean, who would be happy?
Sure.
I said, I'm grateful this was found. I'm grateful it's stage 1A. I'm grateful that by 5 I will be cancer free. I am on top of the world. And they said, interestingly, it was the easiest kidney surgery they'd ever had.
Oh, wow.
And I think the positive attitude can be extreme. That is, that stepping forward, that springing forward that you were talking about. Mm-hmm. That positive attitude can have a huge spring forward effect.
You make a good point. I know I had about 10 years ago, I had a surgery that was removing a tumor, but it was uncertain whether it was benign or not. And when I went in for the pre-op, the day before, they said, "Oh, wow, your blood pressure is really high. I don't know if we should do this surgery." And so I said, No. And it was just like, I've lived the law of attraction for 20 years and was like, okay, this is just a reframe here. Let me recalibrate. She sent me upstairs. They put on all the nodules on my body, checked the heart rate. And the tech stepped back and she sort of screwed her eyebrows together. And she goes, I don't know why they sent you up here. Your blood pressure is fine. And it was like, it was just a matter of me recalibrating. That's all. It was just like my mind, and it was like, oh, I just wasn't paying attention, and it was fine. Again, the same thing was fine. Everything was fine.
Well, tell us about the spirit aspect now of that wheel. And
especially intuition development. How can our listeners develop your intuition? That's kind of a curious thing. I'm Myers-Briggs certified, so both of us are intuitive, have a preference for intuition. But I'm always looking for other ways for people to develop the intuition.
Sure. Great point. And what I'd like to say before I mention that is that, we all have, and to your story, Poppy, about your blood pressure, we all have immense personal power.
Yes.
We do. And we have, as manifestation people, we have the power to create the experience that we want to have. And it took me a while to get my act together and get on the right path. But this spirit lifting section.
Wait a second. Repeat what you just said, because that was really compelling. We all have the power.
We all have immense personal power to create the experience we want to have.
And that is worth writing down, putting it in your note to self, writing in your journal tonight, whatever you could do to remember that.
You're responsible. Jack kept saying that you're responsible for what goes on in your life. Nobody else.
Yes. Right. And for those people who, like me, were suffering from physical illnesses, it was hard for me to swallow that.
Yes.
That I had somehow been responsible for creating this sort of thing in my life. But as I took a look at my body practices, my mind practice and spirit practices, no wonder I was sick. That race car had broken down on the side of the road. I had to admit it. I had to get out and push.
I love it.
Yeah. So intuition development is an important part of the spirit lifting section of my well-being. And for me, I have always felt that I had good intuition. I didn't always follow it. Like, when I would be driving to my office, in the morning on a Saturday, I kind of knew I shouldn't have left my kids for the whole Saturday with my spouse. Maybe I should be with them, and I didn't listen to it. So I think that part of me realizes that my first tip would be having stillness and being a person rather than that race car where I was always on the gas and I was pushing and pushing and pushing myself. What I've learned is the allow part.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's where the intuition comes in. When you give yourself a moment to drive with not speaking on the phone, to drive in silence, for instance, you allow thoughts to come in.
Right.
Where you might have a burst of inspiration. Oh, what a great idea.
Right.
Or my intuition's telling me that maybe this isn't going to be the right business deal. Or, in some cases when, after I got divorced and I was dating, this didn't feel right, this date.
Yeah.
Maybe this isn't the right person. I also, though, supplemented because I really did want to have some more information. I read a lot of books on intuition. Right. And the third thing I did was I consulted coaches like you because, I really thought I had spirit-based guides and coaches all along my journey for the 12 years that I was in my healing path, and still am. I still have coaches because I think that they can really validate. You know what? That intuition is valid.
Yes,
that's your heart speaking to you, and I think that's really important to get that feedback.
I love this. Well, Megan,
we love this wheel, and is the wheel the imagery and the information about it all available on your website? Or?
Yes. If you go to www.meganmcnealy.com, you will be able to read all about my well-being blend, which I have modeled and customized on the website for people to see what are the different spokes, and then what are the different customizations that I did. A lot of people want to know, what did you do? But I really encourage people to contact me. I'm happy to consult with anyone. I will then give you the visual. The actual wheel is not on the website at the moment. When we work together, I will share it with you. We'll go through it. And what I've also been doing is doing this for a lot of groups. And I've been starting to do more corporate speaking engagements. And that's been phenomenal to do in a big group as well. So it's a lot of fun. I hope this helped people.
Oh my gosh.
To just be inspired.
Yeah, I would absolutely. I would tell anybody listening, for the relationship help, we'd love to help. And again, it's relationalexperts.com. And for this total well-being of mind, body, and spirit, which it's so critical for, and again, your story, the proof source of your story, your life is phenomenal. So we can't thank you enough for joining us and sharing all these marvelous insights. And we look forward to spending some more time with you here shortly.
Well, and
thank you, Poppy. And then thank you, Geoff.
And then just stay on the phone with us for just 1 second. We just want to share with you from Poppy and Geoff Spencer, our guest, Megan McNealy. And next week in our Spring Forward series, we'll have guest Kelly Christensen, who is a 33-year-old senior marketing strategist and columnist for Miss Career Girl. It's MS Career Girl. And she's going to talk about how to deal with a breakup.
Ooh, a breakup.
So we can, I'm sure there'll be a whole ton of reframing going on. We'd love to hear your comments on relationalexperts.com. Jot us a note if you have a question for Megan McNealy. Please go to her website and ask away, inquire away. Certainly inspirational. We thank you so much, Megan, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we look forward to our new friend and collaborative partner for many more things to come that are wonderful and filled with gratitude, love, and trust.
Thank everyone for listening. Take care.
Bye.